G'day and welcome to ReDriven and welcome to part 3 of our top 5 track cars series. And I tell you what, it's this price category that's most likely going to start a whole bunch of arguments. It's the 30,000 to 50,000 Aussie dollar budget range. Now, there are a few rules and guidelines to this list, and if you don't know what they are, we do go over them in part 1. The link is just up here and also in the description. Go and watch that first because, yeah, it sets up all the ground rules. Also, like last week, we're not going to be featuring any repeats or, just the newer, more expensive versions of cars that we've already mentioned in the series. But kicking things off and representing the small front-wheel drive category, and look, I know on ReDriven we normally focus mainly on used and second-hand cars, but this thing is far too good to ignore. It's the Hyundai i20N. Just like the Fiesta ST that we mentioned last week, the i20N is just another example of a small, light hatchback featuring a punchy engine, performance-tuned suspension and brakes, and a character that positions sheer fun and just driving enjoyment over outright speed and lap time pace. But where the i20N really shines is actually in the more, boring, sensible stuff. We're not sure if this is globally available, but here in Australia at least, the i20N's 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty also covers track time. Plus, with it being so bloody popular, chances are it may be some time before it depreciates in value. Plus, for the daily grind, it's a funky yet practical small 5-door hatch that is loads of fun to drive. But get it out on the track and it still shines. I've actually been fortunate enough to hammer one of these things around Queensland Raceway, and even in completely stock standard trim, it's a bloody weapon of a little thing. So much so that I can only imagine how impressive it would be with some track spec tyres and a few intelligent modifications. Negatives? Well, look, actually getting your hands on one at the moment can be a bit of a challenge, and no matter how good it is, many out there are guilty of being brand snobs. So a car wearing a Hyundai badge sitting in their driveway may still be unappealing. And look, if this is you, and that's totally okay, maybe our honourable mention will float your boat instead. It's the Abarth 595 Competizione. If your idea of a track car is basically a go-kart with a barely acceptable amount of practicality for the daily duties, the 595 Competizione is for you. Small, light, more than enthusiastic performance, and a suspension and chassis tune that seems to have used the behaviour of like a hyperactive puppy as its influence. This little Italian is a talented track performer while still dripping in all of the Italian romance and charm that you could ever want. Some say it's like a small Ferrari. That's maybe being a little bit too generous, but yes, these are hilarious. And next up, it is the larger front-wheel drive category, and our pick is the Honda Civic Type R. Okay, look, yes, design-wise, unless you're still in your teens or you're happy to look past the plethora of bloody wings and vents and plastic bits glued to this thing, appearance-wise, the FK8 Civic Type R, it's simply too boy racer for most. But ignoring the aesthetics, there is no denying that this thing is one hell of a performance car. Countless front-wheel drive lap records for various circuits around the world, multiple Performance Car of the Year awards, glowing reports from motoring journalists and consumers alike, the Type R has proven its track abilities time and time again. And away from the track, the story gets even better. A bloody huge boot for its class, loads of room in the second row, and even getting in the back is a breeze thanks to that 5-door body, while in the first row, the seats are wonderfully supportive and it has a decent amount of tech and a 5-star ANCAP safety rating. Plus, being a Honda, the build quality and reliability should be exceptional even when driven in anger. Is there anything that this car can't do except maybe power slides and just look sensible? Even to prepare it for the track, short of some sticky tyres on lightweight rims, throwing in some track spec pads and brake fluid and maybe fitting an oil cooler and a large radiator for the warmer climates, the Type R is pretty much good to go. But what if you just can't look past that adolescent design aesthetic? Well, that's where our honourable mention comes in, and it's actually the i20N's larger siblings. Depending on where you're watching this from, it's either the Hyundai i30N or the Veloster N. The Hyundai pair very nearly took out this category for basically all of the same reasons that the i20N topped its group. But after talking with a few people that have tracked both the Type R and the i30N extensively, and the simple fact that the Honda is a touch more practical for the daily duties, the Honda took this category out by the smallest of margins. Now, if you happen to own an FK8 Civic Type R and you're located in Sydney or Newcastle or somewhere close and you'd be happy for us to feature it here on ReDriven, can you please let us know in the comments because we would love to review one. Now, taking out the all-wheel drive category, it's the Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution, and really, any of them. Now, while the vast majority of cars that we've mentioned on this list, they start with the sole intention of being road cars that are then modified by their various manufacturers to offer serious performance abilities. The Lancer Evolution, and look, yes, while it is based on the family-friendly Lancer, it was primarily designed, engineered, and manufactured with actual competition in mind. Like, we're talking Group N rally and various tarmac events here. Unfortunately, it can be so focused on winning that, as a daily driver, many do claim it to be heavily compromised when compared to much more of the consumer-friendly competition. But I know what you're thinking, the same can be said for the GR Yaris. It's a homologation special, and look, you're right, but the GR Yaris that you want for the track, it needs to have the schmancy diffs, and GR Yarises with schmancy diffs, they're currently asking more than $50,000 here in Australia. So maybe it'll take out this category in next week's list. Who knows? Back to the Lancer Evo. Look, maybe excluding the automatic versions, all Evos are incredible for track work. If you want the full, raw and tactile Evo experience, hunt down one of the various models of Evo 5 or Evo 6. If you want the legendary performance but need an Evo that's just easier to deal with on a daily basis, an Evo 10 might be the answer. For us, look, the perfect balance is either an Evo 8 or an Evo 9, but just how an Evo behaves, how reliable it is, and just what an Evo is even capable of will depend on your personal preference and your budget, because the aftermarket and modification scene for these things is absolutely huge. For the track, you can go from mild by just sorting the suspension via some quality coilovers and sway bars and get it glued to the track with a quality set of performance tyres, through to absolutely wild, basically creating a time attack worthy monster. In fact, if you'd like to see what owning and driving a mild and then completely wild Evo is like, check out our full Evo review video either up here or in the link in the description. But what if you need something newer, something a little bit more refined and, dare I say, sensible? Well, the honourable mention for this all-wheel drive category, it goes to the Ford Focus RS, and try to make it the limited edition. Look, the interwebs is packed full of forums and comment threads hosting arguments claiming that a Focus RS LE is better than any Evo and vice versa. But as we've now tested and reviewed both, from our point of view, look, one simply isn't better than the other. They're all incredible cars and they're so closely matched, the major variable is going to be your personal taste and whoever is steering the thing. If you are genuinely thinking about buying a Focus RS and taking it to the track, look, spend that little bit extra and get a limited edition. The diffs fitted to the LE, look, they make bugger all difference on the road, but they become instantly apparent on track. But as good as the Focus RS is, it's not perfect. To see what I'm talking about, click on the link up here or the one down there after this video. Okay, smallish rear-wheel drive cars for the track in this price range. Talk about being spoilt for choice. There are so many worthy options, but our pick is the Honda S2000. Okay, look, let's get all of the honourable mentions out of the road. Firstly, the BMW M140i and 240i. What epic little cars. Superb balance, huge tuning potential, all wrapped in BMW styling, and especially in terms of the M140i, also offering great practicality. But there are a few question marks surrounding their reliability, especially when they're pushed hard. And fixing BMWs is very rarely cheap. And the same can be said for the Porsche 986 Boxster S. Look, yes, the mid-engined balance and typical Porsche poise is utterly intoxicating to drive. So much so that many claim mid-engined Porsches are actually more enjoyable things to pilot versus the non-GT 911s. And a relatively current Porsche performance car for under $50,000 always seems like it's a bargain. But the thing is, pushing hard on track does result in wearing things out, and those things will most likely be bloody expensive to repair and replace. Then you have the modern classic Nissan 200SX, or the Silvia, which for this budget you'll be able to have in swan song S15 form. An S15 setup for track makes for a phenomenal thing. Whatever you want to do with this Nissan, from keeping it pretty much standard short of sticky tyres and sorted suspension and brakes, through to making it some fire-breathing, drift and track-destroying weapon, is possible thanks to a huge performance parts universe. Plus, being a Nissan, built at the height of Nissan, the reliability is superb even when punted hard. But well cared for examples are becoming harder and harder to find. Turbo engines, especially 20-year-old ones, arguably require more attention and care than their naturally aspirated counterparts. And as track days are all about immersing yourself in the pleasure and experience of driving, what better way to heighten that experience than to do it topless? Hence why the S2000 is our pick for this particular category. Now look, if you've never driven a well-sorted rear-wheel drive convertible on a racetrack, please do it, because it will totally alter your perception of speed and just blatant fun in the most wonderful ways. The S2000 was designed from scratch to be a genuine driver's car. There's a good amount of excellent condition examples still for sale, and the values seem to keep increasing. And like the S15, the S2000 was built when Honda were on a roll, so the build quality and reliability is excellent. Plus it has one of the all-time greatest shift feels ever, the handling even in standard trim is exceptional, and it revs to nearly 9,000 RPM. And that sounds like this. Like, even to get it sorted for the track is easy. Just fit some track-suited brake pads, upgrade the brake fluid, maybe throw in some stainless brake lines, and look, fit a race harness, because if the worst does happen and you end up upside down with no roof, just relying on a 3-point seatbelt is honestly terrifying. But that's about it. Even tyres wise, look, sure, you could fit some super sticky R compound rubber, but these things, even on a set of just quality performance street tyres, they absolutely rock. Now, just like the Type R, if anyone out there owns an S2000 or an S15 or a Boxster or a Cayman and you'd be happy for us to film it and you're located near Sydney or Newcastle, can you let us know in the comments or over on Instagram, because we would love to feature all of those cars. Also, guys, look, we love making this content for you, but the only way that we can keep making it is with your support. And the best way to support us is just by hitting those like and subscribe buttons and sharing our content with all of your mates. It's that simple. Oh, and also to be notified when part 4 of this series comes out, just hit that bell icon too. Now, the larger rear-wheel drive category, and there were so many potential contenders here, from the Lexus ISF through to various Nissan Skylines, but our pick, it's actually a tie. I don't know if we've ever had a tie in a top 5 video before, but we have a tie. It's between the Ford Mustang and the Holden Commodore SSV Redline, and HSV Club Sport, and Pontiac G8, and Vauxhall VXR8. With incredibly close power to weight ratios, big V8s under the bonnet, and an approach to dynamics that's clearly influenced by old school muscle cars, really the only deciding factor between the Mustang and the range of Commodore based alternatives is if you need maximum practicality, buy one of the Commodore variants. If backseats and boot space is of little concern to you, buy the Mustang. Like, even in terms of the old Ford versus Holden battle, like, what battle? Holden doesn't even exist anymore. The battle is done. Obsessing over stuff like that would be like obsessing over watching Mike Tyson fight an imaginary friend. Anyway, look, in terms of the Mustang, look, yes, the internet is overflowing with dickheads spinning out of control when they leave Cars and Coffee, but with the right attitude and some quality driver training, the Mustang is a hugely enjoyable and highly capable car, both on and off the track. Like some of the cars that we mentioned previously, in terms of track-specific modifications, the sky's the limit when it comes to how ballistic a Mustang can be. But to maintain reliability and decent manners when away from the track, simply upgrade the brake fluid and brake pads, make sure that the tyres are up to scratch, and keep the fluids nice and fresh, and you're good to go. For the Holden, HSV, Pontiac and Vauxhall crew, well, first of all, you have to decide which actual VE or VF Commodore based option suits your needs. For the actual Commodore, look, the one we'd be going with is a VF SSV Redline, which for our North American viewers is basically the Pontiac G8 GXP, but that's based on a VE Commodore, not the VF. But look, regardless of all that, these are the ones to go with their upgraded Brembo brake package and a host of other factory-fitted Go Fast bits. And remember, the SSV Redline is also available as a wagon or a ute. In fact, the ute variant is still the fastest ute, pickup or commercial vehicle to ever lap the Nürburgring. And it did it in pretty much standard trim. Surely that's all the track cred that this thing needs. Or for the same budget, you could go with a slightly older VE-based HSV Club Sport, which for our UK and European viewers is basically the Vauxhall VXR8, which again can be had in wagon form for maximum practicality. In sedan form, the Club Sport just tops the SSV Redline for power to weight by the smallest of margins, but the VF with its honed and refined chassis is arguably sweeter in terms of handling, but overall, look, one isn't better than the other. Splitting them is purely a matter of opinion. Now look, we should mention, even within all of this, there are various updates and options, and even for the engine, there was a swap from the LS2 to the LS3, but thanks to the basic platform staying consistent and taking into account just how awesome the the LS power plant is in, look, honestly, any form, there is an endless array of modifications and improvements that you can make. But again, taking reliability and longevity into account, for track adventures, just keep it simple and sensible. Throw in a set of track-ready pads, upgrade the fluid, fit some stainless brake lines and performance tyres, and you should be good to go. But remember, these are a pretty big and heavy car, and the harder you drive, the faster that they'll eat their consumables, and the more out of pocket you'll be. Now, I feel like I'm asking a lot of favors in this video, but if anyone out there has a 6th generation Mustang that you'd be happy for us to film and feature, can you let us know in the comments, because we would love to feature one. Also, next week, we're moving up into the $50,000 to $100,000 category. So what cars do you think should make the list? Let us know in the comments. It's the 30,000 to 50,000 Aussie. So good until I f***ed it at the end. Watch part 1 up here, or the link. And a suspension and chassis tune that seems to, again, in the description. You'll be able to have it in swan song. Another word, 2 words I can't pronounce. Competizione, you fucking dickhead. Pickup or commercial vehicle. I don't know, Mike Tyson fighting an imaginary friend. Doing it again. Remember, guys, can you please hit those like, subscribe, and bell buttons, and we'll see you next week for part 4. See you later.